हेलो फ्रेंड्स, वेलकम टू इंग्लिश का ज्ञान चिंतन के साथ एंड likewise we always do. For this particular weekend we are going to discuss new essay for IELTS stars 2. Okay, so without wasting any time, let's start the discussing the statement for today. If I talk about the statement of today, then the statement is something like this: some companies and organizations require their employees to wear uniforms. What are the advantages and disadvantages of wearing a uniform? So this is what the statement which is given to us, on which we need to write the essay. So likewise, I said always that normally I always prefer to write 4 paragraph pattern to handle the case of IELTS stars 2, in which the first one will be introduction. The second, it means the first paragraph of body will target the first section of the essay. The second will target the second, and the last one will be your conclusion. As you can see from the screen, the type of the essay is a kind of in which we need to give answer to two different questions. The one question would be, what are the advantages of wearing a uniform? And the another would be, what are the disadvantages of wearing a uniform in organization? So these are the two questions that we are going to discuss in our respective paragraph of body, which is body paragraph number 1 and body paragraph number 2. So first of all, let's start discussing introduction. And for writing introduction, right, we need to find out, or we need to do two activities. And the first activity is finding keyword. So let's start finding keyword from this particular statement. So if I talk about the keyword for this particular statement by using which we can develop our introduction, then it would be uniform, right? You can write 2 or 3 generalized statements which can target to the significance of uniform within the organization. How you can write, or which kind of sentences you can write, that we are going to see in a minute in a next slide, in which I have discussed entire introduction paragraph which has been developed by me for this particular statement. So the keyword for this particular statement of the essay would be uniform. Once you find the keyword from the statement, then it's time to discuss, or then it's time to represent your thesis statement. Friends, thesis statement is nothing but a statement by which you can communicate that, okay, I am going to discuss this and this thing within my essay, so that your examiner will understand how your essay is going to be developed, right? So if I talk about the statement, thesis statement of this particular statement, or for this particular essay, then simply the thesis statement would be the answers of your two questions which are present in your essay statement. So without wasting any time, let's discuss thesis statement for this particular topic. So as you can see, friends, there are two questions which has been asked to us. The first one is, what are the advantages of wearing a uniform? And the second question is, what are the disadvantages of wearing a uniform? And just because of that reason, our thesis statement will be simple, look like this, that this essay will explain merits and demerits of wearing a uniforms within organization. Merit means advantages, demerit means again disadvantages. Means simply by putting this particular statement in your introduction paragraph, you will communicate to your examiner that I am going to discuss merits in my first body paragraph of wearing a uniform, and I am going to discuss demerits of wearing a uniform within the organization in my second body paragraph, and the last one will be your conclusion, right? So up to this particular point we have discussed finding the keyword, thesis statement, and now let's see how we can develop by using this idea our introduction paragraph. I hope, friends, you understand how the introduction can be developed for this particular statement and how the thesis statement can be written. Now it's time to discuss body paragraph number one. As per our thesis statement, in our body paragraph number one, we are going to discuss advantages of uniform within the organization. So just friends, ask yourself, if one organization makes a rule that each and every employee has to wear a uniform, then what are the advantages from the perspective of organization? And what are the advantages from the perspective of employees also? So those all points can be included within this particular paragraph. Okay. So the first and foremost advantage, according to me, would be feeling of uniformity and equality in all employees. See, friends, if I talk about the big organization, and if there is a common rule for all the employees that okay, all employees has to wear a certain kind of um, uniform, then there will be a feeling of equality, right? Each employee will feel the similar kind of importance for of them within the organization, means each employee of the company will feel equal, and just because of that they will work more, they will work more productively, and ultimately it will become beneficial for organization. So just because of that reason, we can include that particular point in our advantages paragraph. It means body paragraph number one. Now, what would be the second? So the first advantage that we have discussed, it is from the perspective of employee. Now let's discuss the second advantage. Again, it is from the perspective of employee. And the second advantage of wearing a uniform would be security of workers. And I would like to give example over here. Let's say, for example, there is an organization in which firefighters are working. Okay. And if there is a compulsion that okay, each and every firefighter has to wear a uniform, so that protected uniforms can also save them from flame, from fire. So from the perspective of employee also, the security of workers or security of employees can be also considered as a advantage when we discuss the compulsion of wearing a uniform. Apart from these firefighters, there are also so many manufacturing industry in which the employees are required to wear a certain kind of uniform to protect their body from the work that they are doing. So again, if there is a compulsion of wearing those kind of uniform, then definitely it will save the employees from certain kind of harm, from certain kind of injury. So again, that is the advantage of wearing a uniform in the organization from the perspective of employee. Now let's discuss some advantages from the perspective of organization instead of the from the perspective of employees. Now, what are the advantages for organizations when their employees will wear a uniform? So the first and foremost advantage would be indirect marketing strategy. See, when you have, let's say for example, you have 500 employees within your organization, and if those 500 employees wear a similar kind of what I can say, similar kind of uniform on which there is a logo of your company, there are certain symbols of your company, then when those resources will travel within the city, will travel from one place to another place, that that uniform will act as an indirect marketing strategy for your company, and those kind of indirect marketing strategy will produce your very positive image in within the city, within the area in which your resources are traveling. And eventually this kind of marketing strategy or this kind of uniforms will also create a positive image in your customers mind, that the customers will also feel that okay, the employees of this particular company are well groomed, they are also wearing a neat and clean what I can say, neat and clean uniforms, so that the company has something within that also. And just because of that, the positive image customer's mind will be developed, and this kind of image, with that positive image, the relevant organization will be given more and more work from the customers, and in a longer run it will become boon for the business of that particular organization. So that is the advantage from the perspective of organization when their employees will wear a uniform. So this is the third advantage. Now, the last advantage from the perspective of organization, according to me, would be prevent unauthorized access within the firm. See, friends, when there is a compulsion that each and every employee has to wear a uniform when they come to organization, and if like then it will become quite easy to identify someone who has not wear or who is not wearing the uniform. It is quite easy to identify those kind of individual from the others who has already worn the uniform. So by means of wearing uniform within the firm, like it can also become helpful to identify certain individuals who are trying to do something bad within the firm during some period of time. Okay, so with the introduction of this kind of uniforms within the organization can also prevent some unauthorized access from some individuals, and that will become helpful for their growth also. So these are the advantages of wearing a uniform uh, within the organization. Two, we have discussed from the perspective of employees. Two, we have discussed from the perspective of organization. And I hope friends you understand all these four points. Now let's discuss how we can develop our body paragraph number one by using these particular 4 points. We have already discussed advantages of wearing a uniform within the organization. Now it's time to discuss disadvantages of wearing a uniform, or disadvantages of making compulsion of wearing a uniform within the organization in our body paragraph number two. So without wasting any time, let's discuss body paragraph number two. So the first disadvantage, according to me, would be like, let's say, for example, if there is one organization which makes quite rigid rules and regulation, very strict rules and regulation about wearing a uniform. So in that particular organization, it may possible that their employees may feel restricted. Okay, now, if employees feel restricted, it may possible just because of that reason their commitment will be reduced. The commitment of employees will be reduced. It means they are not that much willing to work properly in a longer run. Okay, and just because of that reason, the quality of work eventually will be reduced. And if quality of work will be reduced, and again it will become uh, it will not be good for the organization from the perspective of work output, from the perspective of quantum of work, from the perspective of quality of work, and eventually their image within the market will be decreased. So this is the disadvantages of having rigid policy for the employee to wear a uniform. And just because of that reason, company has to be flexible enough, and they have to make the companies have to make such a policies in which there is a compulsion also to some extent to wear a uniform, and some flexibility has to be given to employees on certain days of work in which they can also come within in informal clothes or something like that in which they are comfortable. Now, if I talk about the second disadvantage of wearing a uniform within the organization, that would be like for some employees, like it is not affordable to maintain that clothes or to maintain those kind of uniforms, right? Or sometimes it is not affordable for some employees for whom or whose salary is quite less, right? Or the salary standards are quite less. For them, it is not possible to afford those kind of uniforms. So that is like if those kind of employees are not able to wear a uniform, then slowly and negatively, like they can also provide the negative reviews of this kind of policies of that firm within the market. And if these negative reviews are spread within the market, then the prestige of that particular company will be hampered. It means that reputation within the market will be reduced. And if that is the case, then in a longer case, the business, overall business of that firm will be reduced. And just because of that reason, it will be a disadvantage of organization if whatever uniform which has been decided by them, if it is costly and if it is not affordable by some of the employees, and if the proper arrangements are not being made for those kind of employees, then they can provide the negative reviews. And with those negative reviews, the overall business of that firm can be hampered. So that's why you can also include this particular point in your disadvantage body paragraph number 2. Right now, whatever points that we have discussed, let's say for example the employees feel restricted, just because of that their commitment has been reduced, the quality of work has been reduced. For some, the uniforms are not affordable. They can also pass the negative reviews, and all these negative points sometimes also force employees to leave the company. Right, if let's say for example your employees are continuously pinpointing one point that okay, we are not comfortable with this policy of wearing uniform on a daily basis and something like that. And if you are as an employer, if you are not making any change in that policy, then all this negative kind of environment will force your employees to leave the company. Right, and ultimately there will be a scarcity of employee, there will be a less employee, skilled employee will remain in your organization, and again um, which will again become harmful for the overall work of your company, and your business of your company will be reduced. So that is the ultimate result. If there is a rigid policy of wearing a uniform within the organization, then eventually or at the last, the it may possible that with that rigid policy, the number of employees will resign from the company, and employee will not, and the employees or the company will not have enough number of resources to work, to produce the quality of work. And just because of that reason, their prestige or their overall image within the market will be reduced. So that is also the disadvantage from the perspective of organization when they have rigid policy of wearing a uniform. I hope friends you understand all these points, all these disadvantages of having a rigid policy in which the employees has to be forced to wear a uniform. Now let's see how we can develop our body paragraph number two with this particular points. Now it's time to discuss the conclusion. Now, as I have said earlier, that whenever you have to write the conclusion, try to ask yourself who and what. Who means who can do something to handle this kind of scenario, and what can be done. So the answer of who for this particular situation or for this particular scenario would be the existing authorities of the company. It means instead of existing, you can also use incumbent word, right? So according to me, existing authorities of the company has to make some flexible policies in which the employees can be allowed to wear informal clothes also on certain basis, on certain days, and on certain fixed days they have to wear a uniform also, with some plus and minus, or with some proper arrangement if required. So that is what the simple idea of the conclusion. Now let's see how we can reframe that idea in our actual conclusions, and then in that way our conclusion will be something like this. To conclude, despite having ample positive sides of uniform, it means although we have so many advantages of having uniform, incumbent authorities should think rigorously for revamping. Revamping means change, or for changing. Stringent means strict rules which can solve. Solve means alleviate the snacks of employee. It means if there are some problems for the employees to follow that rigid policy of wear a uniform, then the authorities has to make some flexible policies in which their work will be also done, and there will be less problem from the perspective of employees also. So this is what the conclusion is for this particular statement. I hope you understand all these points, and you like whatever the entire essay that we have seen. So without before moving to the next thing, I would like to share this particular playlist of my channel in which like I have spent or I have worked quite hard to gather 100 words with meaning and with sentences. So all this explanation can definitely become helpful to you to learn new words, and later on those words can be utilized within your IELTS task 2 in your speaking as well. Okay, so try to use them whenever you feel them comfortable, right? So thank you so much, friends, for watching my video. Now it's time to see the entire essay slide by slide. So let's go for it. Thank you so much for watching my video. And if you like the content, then please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much.